They let me pick. Did I ever tell you that? Choose whichever Spartan I wanted. You know me. I did my research, watched as you became the soldier we needed you to be.
Please, don't shake the light bulb.
On the blood of our fathers, on the blood of our sons, we swore to uphold the covenant, even to our dying breath.
Earth is all we have left. You trust Cortana that much?
There has been no first-person shooter released in the past 25 years quite like Halo. That might sound like hyperbole. Sure, there have been other first-person shooters, great ones in fact, games that have matched and surpassed Halo's gameplay, surpassed its visuals, and its player count. But none have quite matched its soul. None have quite matched the feeling of exiting the escape pod and stepping foot on a Halo ring for the very first time. None have matched the rush of making one last effort and racing across the collapsing ring at the very end of Halo 3. And none have quite matched the feeling of a late night split screen Blood Gold sessions with your friends. Even when they say they aren't screen watching. They definitely are. Now this isn't the type of video I'd usually make. I've dabbled in gaming content before, but I haven't dedicated an entire video on one game. But the recent announcement of Halo Combat, or should I say Campaign Evolved, has got me wondering. What made Halo so special to begin with? Before all the sequels, before all the books, and before all the poorly made TV shows? Back when it was just one game. Back when it was made by a team of just 40 people who didn't even know they'd break even. Back when it was just Halo. Because the game they made almost 25 years ago had meaning. It had a meaning that was lost throughout the years. One that I'm not sure that 3-4 Halo studios can replicate. But I hope they can. For the countless people who haven't tried it yet, and for the people on PlayStation getting a taste of Bungie's masterpiece for the very first time. So, what made Halo so special? Now, showing Halo off to somebody today wouldn't really get much of a reaction. Yet, it's a first-person shooter, but one of the most finely crafted ones of its kind. Every movement and action is designed to be second nature to the player. Every weapon in the sandbox has its purpose, and every enemy has its clear strengths and weaknesses. Halo's movement nowadays can be considered to be quite slow because it isn't a movement shooter, and it doesn't have the ADHD-riddled sprints and slides and abilities other games have. Yeah, but slow is far from the truth, because every encounter is meticulously designed around the tools and abilities that the player has at their disposal. The levels are designed to be subtle and immerse the player in its atmosphere, but we'll get to that later. The player controls their avatar, the Master Chief, by moving with the left analog stick and looking around with the right one. Left trigger throws grenades and the right one fires their gun. The player also has a health bar that regenerates as they stay out of combat, but they also have a second health bar that must be recovered using health pack. They can hold only 2 guns and 2 types of grenades. Basic stuff, I know, but it's important to remember that this game came out in 2001. Console shooters at this time were still working off a control framework set by GoldenEye, which, may I remind you, was designed for a system with this as its controller. PC shooters like Quake and Half-Life had improved control schemes to shooters of the past, but Halo had revolutionised their controls for consoles, an achievement that can still be seen today, with its control setup largely being the basic framework for pretty much every console shooter. The fact that Halo's gameplay appears so basic and standard is exactly what made it revolutionary in the first place. Now, Halo has 3 main weapon types: human weapons, covenant weapons, and power weapons. Human weapons are the weapons made by the human faction in the game, obviously, and are all designed to be a very familiar set of guns. We have the assault rifle, the automatic low damage, high rate of fire primary rifle of the human forces. We have the Magnum, the true primary rifle for anyone who's actually played the game. Jack of all trades gun that has a high rate of fire, good damage, and is usable at most ranges. I'd say it's kind of broken if it wasn't so damn fun to use. And lastly, we've got the shotgun. A short-range hand cannon that will deal immense damage in quick succession. My personal favourite shotgun in gaming. Many of you will notice that I missed out a couple of the human-made weapons. I'll speak about those in a second. Human guns are all designed to be hit-scan weapons, meaning they don't actually fire any actual projectiles. The thing they're firing at just recognises the player has shot their gun and instantly reacts accordingly. This is done to make weapons fun to use, as the player doesn't need to lead their shots. I can confirm, they are in fact fun to use. The Covenant weapons used by the game's main enemy faction, the Covenant, includes the plasma rifle, the plasma pistol and the needler. What sets these apart from the human-made guns is that they aren't actually hit-scan. They shoot actual projectiles. This means the Chief won't get instantly annihilated by 3 different laser beams that they won't get the chance to react to. You can actually dodge and avoid the shots that the enemy takes. Human guns are designed to be fun to shoot with, and plasma guns are designed to be fun to be shot at. Another thing that sets the plasma guns apart is that they're particularly effective against shields. A human gun will take quite a while to take out an enemy's shields, but a plasma weapon can do it in just a few shots. Plasma pistol specifically can do it with just 1 charge shot. They're not great though against unshielded enemies, but that's where human weapons shine, since they can rip those alien bastards to shreds. And thus the noob combo was born, where a loadout of a magnum and a plasma pistol will make you unstoppable in campaign and a cheap bitch in multiplayer. Oh yeah, and then there's the needler. I mean, in the other game it's OOP, it's basically a power weapon, but I mean in this one it just looks neat. And finally, we've got the power weapons. The human-made sniper rifle and rocket launcher and the Covenant fuel rod cannon. These are all basically just instant win buttons. You pick one of these up and we're instantly entering the Spartan power fantasy where you're just deleting enemies with 1 click. Again and again and again and oh, you're out of ammo. Well, guess it's back to the noob combo. I don't really think I need to explain why using power guns is cool. You point at shit and they explode, nor an activation. Now what's fun as using guns to draw funny shapes on a wall is guns are really fun to use to shoot at enemies. Lucky for you, Halo Combat Evolved has those in spades. There are 3 main enemy factions for the player to miss all their shots shooting at. The Covenant, the Flood and the Sentinels. The Covenant is the group you'll encounter for most of the game, and they're by far the group that showcases the Combat Evolved's gameplay loop the best. Halo's gameplay is often described to be like a game of chess. Each enemy is like a different piece. Grunts are grunts. They aren't really a threat on their own, but can become quite a nuisance in a group as they pepper the player with shots from their plasma pistols and needlers, with them mostly serving to prevent your shields from recharging, allowing one of the bigger threats to finish you off. If you actually die from a grunt, well, that's just a skill issue. They're the pawns out of the cannon fodder for the Covenant, and as such, they're by far the easiest to kill. Pretty much any weapon and strategy will do. The most time and ammo efficient way to deal with them though is a single shot to the head with a precision weapon, in CE's case the Magnum. Next up on the food chain are the Jackals. These fucking pricks are the dickheads with shields that block your ballistic gunfire grenades. My hatred for these guys aside, they act as mobile cover of sorts, with player having to find alternate ways of taking them out, as mag dumping into their shields is a surefire way of running out of ammo and getting botted by an elite. There are 3 main ways of dealing with Jackals depending on what you have on hand. Option 1 is to use the Magnum, and to shoot their exposed hand, stunning them and exposing the rest of their body. Option 2 is to use a plasma gun. Much like how plasma weapons are good at stopping energy shields, they are also effective against the shields of a Jackal. Option 3 is to just use a fucking grenade and blow them the fuck up. The annoying pricks deserve it anyway. These guys are the bishops and require the most strategy. Next up we got the Hunters. They're the rook and are the closest thing CE has to an actual boss fight. But in practice they're much more of an inconvenience. They sure as hell look threatening though. These guys are the textbook definition of a glass cannon. From range they'll blast your ass into outer space with their arm cannons, and at close range they'll absolutely body you like an NFL linebacker. All it takes though is a single shot from a Magnum or a sniper to one of their exposed points, and the glass cannon will shatter. Lastly we've got the elites. These are designed to be the player's equal and that are easily the biggest threat. Like the Chief, they have energy shields that need to be taken out before they can be killed. They're also much more aggressive than their Covenant subordinates. Their health and aggressiveness also varies depending on what colour their armour is, tying in with their in-law rank as well. Elites are like the Queen, equal to the player in strength and ability, being able to dodge out the way of incoming fire and also melee attack if the player gets too close. The best way to deal with an elite though is the good old noob combo. Like a chessboard, every piece of the Covenant has its role and must be approached differently. And it's because of this variety in enemy design that allows every encounter to feel different and allows for every weapon in the sandbox to thrive. The Covenant is just one of the 3 enemy factions though. There are still the Flood and the Sentinels left to discuss. These however are much less interesting to talk about. Around the halfway point of the game, the player will discover that the Halo Ring is housing a separate entity that even the Covenant are afraid of. They can tear the chest of an elite to pieces and can take complete control of any living being's body mass. Without delving too much into lore in this section of the video, mainly focused on gameplay, the Flood are basically just space zombies. Their lore and their designs are way cooler than that, like Jesus Christ, this is the stuff of nightmares. But as far as gameplay goes, Yeah, they're just space zombies. In CE, there are 3 forms of the Flood. The infection forms, the carrier forms, and the combat forms. The infection forms are these tiny little creatures that rush and launch themselves at the player. They don't do a ton of damage on their own, but they attack in large enough numbers where they can become quite an issue. Getting 1,000 paper cuts can cause quite the infection after all. The carrier forms are by far the most interesting form of the Flood in Combat Evolved. They just carry these little guys around and explode when they get near you. Tons of infection forms coming out of them. That's actually really gross. The combat forms are the biggest threats. They're just zombies. They're the kind that can run and shoot at you, but yeah, they're just zombies. The Flood are a threat by throwing wave after wave of enemies at you. Whereas the player can be very aggressive with the Covenant, they're on the back foot with most of the Flood encounters, as they don't have the varied AI the Covenant and mostly just rush the player. Like a Flood. Oh, this does lead to some of the issues in the second half of the game. But even in the weaker parts of the game, fighting the Covenant is still great fun, as the moment-to-moment gameplay with them is very exciting. Fighting the Flood, however, runs the risk of getting stale, since they never engage you in the same way. The initial reveal is one of the best parts of the game, but some of the later levels with the Flood, especially a certain library, can get very samey. There are also the Sentinels. They show up sometimes, they fly around and shoot laser beams at you. There's not really much to say about them really, nor do they really do anything interesting. I mean, we've got to fight a ton of them at the beginning of 2 Betrayals, but yeah, that's about it really. What sets Combat Evolved apart from even other Halo games is its atmosphere. CE just has a vibe that no other game in the franchise could ever get close to. It's a mixture of loads of things. Everything just bounces off each other perfectly. The art style makes the environment stand out, the music helps bring out the vibe and character of each location you go to, and the unique characters, whether important or not, all combine to make each faction unique, and iconic to Combat Evolved specifically. I'm sorry, these guys have got nothing on the Combat Evolved Marines. Combat Evolved looks wildly different to other games in the series. It's an aesthetic that Infinite tried to mimic, but couldn't quite get close enough to. It's not necessarily the low poly retro look that CE has due to being an old game, it's a very intentional look. Every location, every specific part of the environment is specifically built to get some sort of reaction from the player. It's supposed to make them feel a certain way.
What do you mean by that?
It's interwoven with how the gameplay is designed too. Like I said earlier, every aspect of the game symbiotically feeds off of each other. The first mission of the game is intentionally made to be cramped and claustrophobic. This is done for gameplay purposes to direct the player to specific arenas that are designed as tutorials, and it also helps the player get used to the general controls of the game in a familiar environment, since most first-person shooters at the time were in closed corridors. It also, though, allows the second level to flourish. After spending the entire first level trapped in these cramped corridors, the player steps out into this huge environment where they have complete freedom. The second level of the game isn't massive by today's standards. How it contrasts from the first level still manages to get a feeling of awe and pure amazement out of me and many others. It's an aspect of the game that has aged phenomenally well, purely because it feels like a breath of fresh air. It feels like when you're able to get out of the car and finally stretch your legs after a long road trip. It's not just this that makes the second level so memorable either, it's the incredible look and vibe that this area has. I find it difficult to put into words how I feel about this section, but I'll try. The whole area just looks otherworldly. It's beautiful with grass and trees and rivers, but everything seems a little off. The grass and the trees are very dark. There's a bright daylight sky, but it has a sort of a purple tinge, and you can still see the stars all around it. And there's the huge imposing ring in the skybox that's always there, and then you see the literal other side of the world, and there are these brutalist pipes and spires coming out of the ground, still functioning but laying there, dormant for a millennia, left to rust and decay by their makers, until humanity and the Covenant discover what's left. None of this is told to the player.
This cave is not a natural formation. Someone built it.
Okay, maybe it is, but it doesn't need to be. And by the time Cortana states the obvious, the player is already thinking these questions. It really is a masterstroke of design. To create a location so otherworldly, yet so familiar looking, took some brilliant minds. And that's what sets the second mission of Combat Evolved apart from the Halo Ring and Infinite. Halo Infinite doesn't look otherworldly. It looks like the US Pacific Northwest with some shiny metal towers in it. There's this tweet that's going around that explains the difference perfectly, saying CE's art direction has much more purple, chrome, and it's less National Park brochure and it's much more early 2000s world music cover art. I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about this one section, but the rest of the game's environment has this level of care and attention too. Whether it's the warm and inviting beaches of Silent Cartographer, the cold yet cosy feeling of 2 Betrayals, the unnerving swamp of 343 Guilty Spark, every mission in the game is expertly designed to unearth some sort of emotion out of the player. Now, as fantastic as the set pieces of Alpha Halo are, the game would still get pretty boring if there were no NPCs. Unlike other Halo games, which design their characters and equipment around what the previous games have established, for the most part, so you have the luxury of the curse, depending on the way you look at it, at being the first. So the team at Bungie had to get inspiration from various other pieces of pop culture at the time. You see a lot of this with the first games of major franchises, like the Batman Arkham series for example. A lot of the designs and the way the characters look are much more comic booky, with the character designs clearly taking notes from shows and comics. This gets phased out as time goes on though, with the franchise having a definitive Arkham look by the end. The design of the UNSC and the Marines show this really well. I touched on this earlier, but the Marines look really cool and unique in this one. They actually aren't my favourite. I much prefer the way they look in Halos 2 and 3, but they look super interesting in Combat Evolved, seeing them in a light you never do in the rest of the franchise. Their inspirations are as clear as day. These Marines have a striking resemblance to the soldiers in Alien, with a bit of Starship Troopers thrown in there for good measure. This was a phenomenal design choice. First, these movies are recognisable franchises which, because they're from a similar genre as Halo, would have shared similar demographics. This makes the Marines appear familiar and inviting, as the player would be used to seeing soldiers like these in a sci-fi setting. A familiarity that's super important in a game that's entirely around exploring the unknown. This also has another side effect. The Marines in CE clearly take inspiration from Aliens and Starship Troopers, but those movies took inspiration from the real-life soldiers of the Vietnam War. This deeply grounds the UNSC in reality. Sure, they're in outer space fighting aliens using energy swords, but wearing bucket hats, and have cloth shirts with rolled up sleeves, radio backpacks with big antennas on them, and equipment that isn't that different from the stuff we use today. They use pump-action shotguns, they use a Magnum that's basically just a modified Desert Eagle, and the main assault rifle uses 5.56 NATO rounds. As strange as it is to say, it humanises the humans. It makes it clear from the get-go that they're outmatched and are fighting a losing battle, without even having to say it. The art designs feed into the story. Again, every aspect of the game feeds into each other. Beyond that though, I mean, just look at them. These guys are awesome. They've got these chunky pieces of armour all over them. They've got these sick Dragon Ball eye pieces, and their low poly 2001ness just has so much charm. I completely get why people are mad about them not looking like this in the remake. While the Marines are designed to look grounded and familiar, the enemies are designed to look the exact opposite, and my god, are the Combat Evolved enemies designed brilliantly. Everything about them is made to look foreign and extraterrestrial, or grim and horrifying in the case of the Flood. The art team at Bungie clearly had a passion and a drive, and a clear vision for how the enemy faction should look, and it shows. The Covenant ships and equipment all have the same level of care too. Much like how the human weapons and equipment are designed to look grounded and familiar, the Covenant guns are made to look strange and alien. The plasma rifle is a perfect example of this. It's a one-handed gun, much like the alien blasters of classic movies, with strange fins and bolts of energy coming out of it. It can't be reloaded either, so neither of the plasma guns can. The game doesn't outright say this, especially since you can reload the Needler, but I always imagined it as the Chiefs just simply didn't know how. They're alien guns after all. The Needler too looks strange and extraterrestrial. God knows how he does it, but the Chief is able to reload the thing. Somehow. It doesn't shoot plasma or even bullets. The Needler's a whole different beast, shooting these crystals that home in on the target. I don't know, maybe the crystal emits the energy of a space alien or something. Whatever these crystal people believe. This same foreign design philosophy applies to the rest of the Covenant as well. Whether it's inside their ships, their vehicles, or even their weapon grades. All of it has a smooth metallic shine, with purples and blues dominating Covenant architecture and design. All of it adding up to an iconic look that would largely be unchanged. While for the most part the UNSC changed with each game, the designs of the Covenant ships and equipment stayed pretty consistent throughout the original trilogy. I think the main strength of the Covenant design in CE is its contrast with the UNSC, with its ability to tell the player all they need to know about them with just one look. I know I was fairly critical of the Flood's addition to the enemy roster earlier, but that does not apply to their designs. Much like how the Covenant are designed in a way to immediately telegraph what the Covenant is about to the player, the Flood are designed to tell the player one thing: run. Don't let this thing, or this thing anywhere near you, otherwise you're fucked. The Flood's grotesque, fleshy carrier pods and sawtooth tendrils and walking corpses all give the vibe of something almost Lovecraftian. This is the kind of shit you'd see in Resident Evil or something. Hell, it's even worse. I mean, the complete tonal shift of the still admittedly fairly goofy looking Covenant to the eldritch horror of the Flood is incredible. And it makes 343 Guilty Spark one of the most memorable parts of the game. Oh yeah, and then there's the Sentinels. they float around, I guess. What is there left to say about the score of this game that hasn't been said already? Halo's reputation for having one of the finest soundtracks in all of gaming is there for a reason. I'm no musician though. I don't claim to know any music theory, and I think talking about it if I did would be doing the game's composers, Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, a disservice. What I can say though is that every piece, every song is incredible and adds to the atmosphere of each level, or heightens the suspense, or gets you knee deep into the action. It's said during the making of the documentaries that due to the nature of Bungie at the time and game development as a whole, the artists and the composers had a say at what happened in the stories and the levels. The Gregorian chants of the main theme and songs like The More emphasise the mystery and religious connotations of the Ring. Tracks like Devil's Monsters emphasise the true horror of the Flood, and tracks like Drum Run keep you locked in on the action. Combat Evolved doesn't have the best soundtrack in the series. I'd say that would go for 3 ODST or Reach. But it is still one of the best soundtracks in gaming, and I honestly think that Halo as a franchise would not be as popular and as revered as if it wasn't for its excellent score. Because ultimately, the music is one of the first things people think of when a franchise is mentioned. Every great franchise is associated with its score, whether it be something like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Legend of Zelda, and of course, Halo. And we have finally reached the part of the video where we talk about the story, and if I'm gonna be honest, it's one of the weaker parts of the game. It's not little Shakespeare like Halo 2, and it's not the epic finale that is Halo 3, but it doesn't need to be. Halo Combat Evolved's strength is that it isn't tethered to the other games like the rest of the franchise. Halo 2, as much of a masterpiece of storytelling as it is very much a sequel to CE, and Halo 3 is very much a finale. ODST has strong links to 2, and Reach is a clear prequel to CE, but Combat Evolved stands on its own. Ah, you forgot to mention the 343 games! What 343 games? Well, it's not a masterpiece of storytelling or anything. Combat Evolved tells you everything it needs to. We don't need to know who the Covenant are and why they're at war with humanity. All we need to know is that they are, so we gotta shoot them. It's left for the player to figure out on their own and infer why humanity is in the situation that they're in. It leaves it a mystery, at least for now. It's something I think is in short supply these days. Too many franchises explain things that don't need to be. We don't need to know how people got the ability to bend the elements in Avatar, and we don't need to know how the Jedi can use the Force. The same goes for Halo. It leaves things for the imagination. That especially goes for the Forerunners. Not once in Bungie's original trilogy do we actually see the Forerunners, and it takes a while for it to be outright explained what happened to them. They let the players connect the dots throughout the trilogy and figure out what happened on its own, because it's all there. The player just has to find it. As to what happened to them in Combat Evolved, they tell us even less. Barely anything, in fact. In CE, they're a complete mystery. All we have to connect to the Forerunners is the ring itself and the dead, empty facilities for us to explore. So what about the A-plot? Well, it's pretty simple. Our character, the Master Chief, and his AI buddy Cortana are aboard the UNSC ship the Pillar of Autumn. It's running away from a Covenant fleet, and it crashes into a mysterious ring world, and the player spends the game finding out what exactly the world is. It's a galactic scale weapon, by the way, and on the way you save some guys, including our captain. Space zombies the Flood get released, and said captain then dies, and you fight your way back through the Pillar of Autumn and blow up the ring to stop the Covenant from using it. There it is. Well, there's a tad bit more to it than that, but that's sort of the bullet points. It's a lot like the first Star Wars movie. Like, a lot like the first Star Wars movie, actually. And, like A New Hope, the story stands on its own. It doesn't end on a cliffhanger like the sequel, and it's not a grand finale like the third entry. It's just a simple tale about blowing up a gigantic superweapon. I do have to say though, there definitely are some low points, and some parts of the story that just happen so the plot can go a certain way. Like in the third mission, once you've rescued Captain Keyes, he says he's found out what Halo is pretty much from overhearing the Covenant talking about it. Somehow the Covenant, who have not spoken English throughout the entire game, was talking about the Halo ring in a way for Captain Keyes to overhear and understand. And they were talking about some highly important need-to-know stuff right by a bunch of prisoners. It's pretty silly, and is obviously just a way to expedition dump and explain to the player the gist of what the ring actually is. But that's okay though. Halo isn't supposed to be a storytelling masterpiece. It's a video game after all. And to be fair, barring a few standouts, Halo did have a much better story than its contemporaries. It's not perfect, and there are a few holes, but overall it's a fun adventure in space. All the really important stuff is done great. The sense of urgency is done brilliantly at the beginning, and they set up the stakes early on. The mystery is done phenomenally well, the horror of the Flood is done masterfully, the shock of what happened to Keyes is done perfectly, and the action-packed ending leaves you at the edge of your seat. all the important things are done just fine. It's just the in-between bits that get a bit iffy in places. So, what did make Halo Combat Evolved so special? Well, if I were to boil it down to one word, I'd say it's collaboration. While for the most part every individual aspect of the game is great, they all feed into each other to make one of the greatest first-person shooters, just of its era, but of all time. What makes it special is how the music gives the game so much life and so much energy. It's how the world of the game is filled with so much mystery and beauty, and most importantly, it's that the game is so much fun to play. Sure, it has its issues, what game doesn't? But it's as close to perfect I think the franchise ever got, and again, it seems to be the most important game in the franchise, because with it being the series' introduction to the PlayStation and its player base, the remake is the franchise's last hope, and if Halo Studios botches the remake, then I don't think the franchise will be able to recover. So, will they be able to catch lightning in a bottle and recapture the original game's magic? I don't know, maybe. But I sure as hell hope so, because Halo is one of the most special and unique shooters out there, and Combat Evolved is the one that started it all.
There are things about Halo even the Hierarchs do not understand.
Something's not right. The fleet that destroyed Reach was 50 times this size.
We're going in.
What would you have your Arbiter do? Demon.
Halo 2 was more than just a game. Beyond just being an amazing sequel, it was an event. It was the kind of game that had people not just waiting in line, but taking up entire blocks anticipating this game. It was the kind of game that had newscasters talking about how it was one of the fastest selling media launches of all time, and it was the kind of game that revolutionised multiplayer matchmaking. It makes me really regret being a dumb little Gen Z baby because I wasn't around for this game's launch. It predates me by about 5 months. Despite this though, going back and playing it today, you can still see its effect on the gaming industry, and how it expands the lore. This is where the story of Halo truly came into its own, allowing us to see the Covenant's perspective for the very first time, having Sergeant Johnson be an actual character in this one, and introducing us to my GOAT, the Arbiter. But despite it having one of the most horrifying development cycles known to man, like Jesus Christ, I think this gave some of the devs PTSD. Bungie hadn't just made a fantastic game, they had made Halo 2. So I think it's time we ask the question, what made Halo 2 the perfect sequel? So, like Halo 1, Halo 2 is the first person shooter. Fucking shocker. And surprisingly, it plays a lot like the first one. Yeah, you move around like Halo 1, Covenant guns are good against shields, human guns are good against unshielded enemies, and the Covenant AI plays like a game of chess. You all know what I'm talking about. I'll talk about this a lot more in my Halo 1 video, so there's no need to repeat myself. So, what does Halo 2 do differently? Well, first of all, the game feels much snappier. It's hard to explain, but I think the game overall has slightly faster animations for everything, making the game feel much tighter. It still has that classic Halo floatiness that all the Bungie era games have, but it isn't quite as slow as Halo 1. Everything from the reloads to the melee animations just happens a second quicker. They also completely axed the health pack system from the first game. In Halo 1, the player had a second health bar that didn't recharge automatically, and had to be recharged using health packs. This added an extra layer to each combat encounter since the player needed to be mindful of how much health they had if their shields were down. If they had plenty, then they could afford to be reckless and be aggressive in combat encounters, but if their health was low, they needed to be much more defensive. This is all gone in Halo 2 since the player only has their shields to worry about. This allows Halo 2 to feel much more familiar to newer players since it's the system that most modern first-person shooters use, but it also feels slightly less dynamic, and makes all the levels play out in a much more similar way than they did in CE. They also give the player much less wiggle room in Legendary, but we'll get to that. As for the weapons, we still have the classic human, covenant and power weapon categories, but shuffled around a bit. For the human guns, unfortunately the big, beautiful, early 2000s looking assault rifle has been binned, and has been replaced by the SMG, which honestly does kind of make sense. The AR always felt much more like an SMG anyway, so having it actually be one makes it visually much more congruent with its role in the sandbox. It doesn't look anywhere near as cool though. It gets all of its aura points back though when using the game's brand new dual wielding feature. This right here, this is the coolest thing in all of Halo. Even though it kind of restricts your movement by not letting you switch weapons or melee without dropping one, I don't care because I'm the fucking Master Chief and I'm shooting aliens with 2 guns. The Magnum is completely dependent on the system too. In Halo 1, the Magnum was the one-size-fits-all gun that was usable pretty much any scenario. In Halo 2 though, it's been nerfed to oblivion. It's barely usable when dual-wielded, but on its own it's a fucking pea shooter. Biggest fall-off in history. This though is mainly because the role of CE's Magnum has now been given to the battle rifle, the new primary rifle of the UNSC in Halo 2. As for the way it plays, it's effectively an M16 that looks like a spacer mask. Lastly, for the human weapons, we have the shotgun. In my Combat Evolved video, I almost categorised this thing with the power weapons because it was so strong it basically was one. In this game though, I wouldn't say so. It's had its range slightly increased I think, mostly as a counter for a weapon I'll talk about in a minute, but its damage has been nerfed. All adding up to a shotgun that is a decent gun to pick up, but it's something I'm nowhere near as excited about getting as I was in the first game. There's also the turret, but it's very situational and is mostly just there to give the level a bit more flavour, which I'm all here for. The Covenant though definitely got some much needed attention in this department, so let's have a look at the list. Well, the plasma rifle is pretty much the same as its Combat Evolved counterpart, but now there's a neat brute variant that's red and has a faster fire rate. The plasma pistol does less individual shot damage, but its charge shot homes in on targets much stronger and faster, making the new combo that much more reliable. Which is usually the only thing keeping you fucking alive in Legendary. The Needler's the Needler, I guess. We've now got the Brute Shot, a grenade launcher which is really cool in concept, but in practice feels a little off. I don't know, maybe the shots bounce off a tad too much. They might need to explode on impact instead. I don't know. They might fix the kinks in the next game, we'll have to come back to that. Then there's the Covenant Carbine. Brand new to Halo 2 as well. It's obviously made to be the Covenant equivalent of the BR. It's got a fairly fast semi-auto fire rate, making it slightly different from the battle rifle, which shoots a 3-shot burst. It's definitely my favourite Covenant gun to use since, like the BR, it's a jack of all trades, and will be useful anywhere, but it does lessen the sort of alien feel of the Covenant. In CE, there are only 3 main Covenant guns, the plasma rifle, the Needler and the plasma pistol, all of which were very different looking, while maintaining that one-handed alien blaster look that differentiated themselves from the more traditional looking firearms of the UNSC. The carbine is very clearly much more gun looking for lack of a better term. By having a somewhat similar frame to the BR, the player can infer its purpose in the sandbox almost immediately, which is great for gameplay purposes. It just muddies the designs a bit I think. Saying that, I actually don't think this is too much of an issue in Halo 2 specifically. The game does a pretty good job of making all the Covenant designs distinctly extraterrestrial looking. I just think it's the start of a trend that only really gets worse as the series goes on. And finally, we've got the Sentinel Beam. I know it's not a Covenant gun, but I'm not going to make a whole other section based solely on this thing, since it's the only usable Sentinel gun in this game. You mostly get to use it in the Arbiter levels anyway, so fuck it, it's a Covenant gun now. I absolutely love its design. You know those little laser beams the Sentinel shot at you in the first game? Well, congrats. You've destroyed one and is using a literal piece of its body to shoot back at other people. It's fucking awesome. And it's really fun to use since it melts pretty much anything in your way, obviously making it really useful against the Flood. Now we obviously can't forget the instant win buttons of the power weapons. We have the returning sniper rifle, rocket launcher and fuel rod cannon from the last game, and now we've got the addition to the beam rifle and the energy sword. The sniper is effectively the same as the one in the first game, but then again, there's no need to improve on literal perfection. Somehow they made the rocket launcher even more broken, with it now having the ability to home in on a target. The fuel rod cannon is pretty much unchanged, I can't lie though. Well, I always kind of forget it exists in this one. The beam rifle is pretty much just a gimped version of the sniper that decides it needs to take a 30-minute power nap if you decide to shoot any more than 2 shots at a time. And then there's the energy swords. This right here. This shit's peak. We got a glimpse of it in Combat Evolved, the enemies using it, but we never got to use it ourselves until now. And it is every bit as awesome as we'd hoped. Honestly, forget about dual wielding, this bad boy is the coolest thing that they added. As for the enemies themselves, they remain pretty similar to the CE counterparts, so I won't spend too much time on them. Again, I spent much more time speaking about each individual part of the Covenant and the Flood in my CE video, so check that one out if you want to hear me glaze Halo's enemy design. Okay, have I self-promoted enough yet? So, what's new? Okay, first of all, we've got the drones. These flying bugs swarm and surround the player, shooting you from all angles. I can't lie, they're super annoying to fight, but they do a good job of changing the gameplay up a bit by having you stop in your tracks and watch out for all angles. Watch out for all angles. Huh. Anyway, next up we've got the Brutes. These are a brand new race in the Covenant that show up only in cutscenes for most of the game, but finally appear as enemies later on to switch things up. They're definitely not as much fun to fight as the elites, as they're bullet spongy as hell, and once they start charging you, they almost insta-kill you as they melee you so fast you don't get enough time to respond. Don't get enough time to respond. It's time to talk about Legendary, isn't it? Okay, so if you bring up Halo 2 to literally anyone, if you aren't talking about its story, you're talking about its ridiculous difficulty. It's strange too, because all the other difficulties, even heroic, are pretty smooth sailing, and then Legendary comes along and acts like you've got to be literal Master Chief in real life to beat the damn thing. I know I'm just some stupid British guy on the internet, so what do I know about game design, but to get down to it, I'd say that Legendary is so hard because of 2 reasons. The first one is, the player has much less health than they did in Combat Evolved. Like I said earlier, you have much less wiggle room in Halo 2 since you don't have that second health bar as a buffer. The energy shield system also acts a tad differently than it did in the first game too. It's much weaker and runs out much quicker than it did in the first game, but it also recharges faster too. I think the idea was to have the game play at a faster pace, with you being able to get back into combat much quicker after running out of shields. In practice though, it slows things down to a crawl, since you are constantly running out of shields and waiting for them to recharge. Since you're always under a barrage of fire in Legendary, your shields will always take forever to recharge, so you end up having less health than the Marines. The second one links to the first reason. The enemies are also much more aggressive and janky in this one. In Combat Evolved, almost every encounter was masterfully designed to take everything into account, from what weapons the player had at their disposal to what difficulty you were playing on, so that all the enemies acted accordingly. In Halo 2 though, the enemies are much less predictable and can act in ways that the player can't predict. Halo 2 had a notoriously brutal production, so it's probably just because they had to rush things out the door, but the enemies feel a little off in some areas. For the most part, all the stuff from the first game, like Grunts, Elites, Shield Jackals and Flood, all act fairly predictably, and are still fun to fight. Aside from your non-existent health, of course. The jank really comes from the new additions like Sniper Jackals and the Brutes. They're fine on paper, but they needed a bit of tuning to get things right. I mean, the main issue with the Jackals is so obvious that it's become a meme, but how do we fix it? Well, first of all, give them a light above their head or something. They do add this in Halo 3, but in Halo 2 they're so hard to spot that they're damn near invisible. Secondly, they react to the player almost instantly, genuinely only a couple of frames, so we need to give them at least an extra second before they start shooting. As for the Brutes, I think their AI just needed some tweaking. Honestly, just add a bit more visual hit registration and make them a little less aggressive and they'd be fine. It's really quite disappointing. Honestly, Combat Evolved had such a good Legendary difficulty, managing the perfect balance of challenge and fairness. In the first game, if you died, usually, it was your fault. You either weren't using the right equipment for the situation, or weren't approaching it the right way. In Halo 2, however, most of the game is just straight up bullshit, often because you aren't given enough time to react to what's happening. One moment you'll be walking down an alleyway, and then the next thing you know, bam, a Jackal 360 no-scopes you like he's a fucking MLG pro. Halo 2 isn't hard because it's fair, and makes you utilise every strategy and piece of equipment at your disposal. It's hard because it's frustrating and tedious. Legendary difficulty tarnishes the reputation of an otherwise very fun game to play. I'll talk about it less in this video to avoid sounding like a broken record, but all the base gameplay elements from Combat Evolved are still here. The moment-to-moment gameplay is still very dynamic and engaging. So if you are going to play Halo 2 and you're not a fucking masochist, like seriously, how the fuck, don't play on Legendary. Play on Heroic. Even though it may be a tad easy in some areas, it's still largely a good challenge to go through, while not making you want to launch your fucking controller into the wall. And besides, letting yourself play through the game in a smoother way, you get to sit back and enjoy the So looking back at Halo 1, I noticed that the story was one of the weaker parts of the game. It wasn't bad, it was just serviceable. Its simplicity gave it lots of charm and built a fantastic foundation for the world of Halo, but Bungie knew that for the sequel they had to pull out all the stops, and my god did they. Halo 2 has the best story in the franchise, and not only did they achieve their goal in creating something much more unique and complex, but they created one of the single greatest stories in FPS campaign history. So, like many shooters of the 2000s, Halo 2 has two protagonists, with their own separate stories that converge at a later point. We've still got our homeboy the Master Chief from the first game, fresh off kicking the Covenant's ass, but for the very first time we also play as a completely different character, Thel 'Vidam, who obtains the title of the Arbiter and must act as the will of the Holy Prophets. Having these two separate player characters is a masterstroke of writing for a couple of reasons. Firstly, seeing the Arbiter's perspective allows the player to see the inner workings of the Covenant and its structure for the very first time. Secondly, it allows the story of the game to be much more complex and intricate, whilst maintaining the simple, badass vibe of the Chief, showing both sides of Halo's narrative. From the second we're introduced to the Arbiter in the first cutscene, we can already infer the overall structure of the Covenant. We know from the first game that it's a collection of multiple different races, but that's about it. Well, in this scene alone, we are already told a few things. First of all, the Covenant is extremely radical. We could kind of infer this in the first game, but we can see this on full display here. In the real world, for the most part, high-ranking generals aren't really punished in this way for major defeats. Usually the hit for reputation is enough, but if they are seriously punished, then it's usually a series of demotions or a discharge of some kind. Here they not only remove his armour and his ranks, but they also brand him, threatening to have him killed for all the Covenant to see. They use religious language like okay, so the Covenant is largely a religious organisation then. Beyond that, we can see it's entirely led by only 3 people, known as the Holy Prophets. There is a council surrounding the Arbiter, berating and shouting abuse at him, but the questioning and the commanding is done by the Prophets. The council is just for show. Furthering this, we can really see that the Covenant is truly an autocracy. While there are 3 prophets, only one has complete control. The Prophet of Truth at the centre of everything. In theory, the 3 prophets are the head of the Covenant, but it's truth that quiets both other prophets down, and it's truth that makes the final decision. All in one cutscene, we're told that the Arbiter is the one commanding the fleet in the first game, the Covenant are a radical religious organisation, Pope-like figures are the heads of the faction, but it's really truth that commands it all. This one cutscene with the Arbiter told us more about the Covenant than the entirety of Halo 1. I'm not bashing Combat Evolved and its story here, I actually really like how simple it is, but Bungie made it clear how much more the lore and inner working of Halo's world they wanted to show here. They also managed to do this one under one of the most brutal crunches known to man, so, you know, maybe think about that when you complain about your job car. On the complete opposite though, we've got the Chief getting congratulated and treated like a hero after his actions in the first game. There's less new stuff lore-wise here since we obviously spend a lot of the time with the UNSC in Combat Evolved, but what this does excellently is show the contrast between the 2 characters and their place in this story. Chief is a hero. He's coming into the story from a position of strength, doing what he does best, kicking the Covenant's ass and being an overall badass. Chief's role in the story is simple, in the best way possible. It maintains Chief's role as an avatar for the player, as he doesn't talk much besides the odd one-liner.
Tell that to the Covenant.
His personality shines through his actions, as he does the most kick-ass thing possible in any situation he's in, delivering that awesome Spartan power fantasy from the first game. The missions as the Chief are all about shooting aliens and blowing shit up, exactly what people wanted from a sequel to Halo Combat Evolved. The Arbiter missions, however, are the complete opposite. Whereas Chief starts off in a position of strength, and mostly remains static throughout the story, the Arbiter starts off from a position of vulnerability. He's at his weakest point at the beginning, and is initially driven by a desperate need for redemption, but as the story continues, he evolves, and realises the Covenant's whole religion, the Great Journey, has been a lie. He rejects the Covenant and fights back against the very prophets he swore undying loyalty to at the start. The Arbiter is dynamic in all the best ways. We see this throughout his interactions with many other members of the Covenant, and even humans. Early on in the game, the Elite Spec Ops commander outright calls out the Arbiter, saying he's got a mark of shame that will never leave him.
This armor suits you, but it cannot hide that mark. Nothing ever will. You are the Arbiter, the will of the prophets. But these are my elites. Their lives matter to me, yours does not. That makes two of us.
By the end though, through all the missions that they fight alongside each other in, Half-Draw is nothing but respect for the Arbiter, treating him as an ally and a true friend. The Arbiter's journey can even be seen by the way he interacts with humans. Early on, the mere mention of the Master Chief makes him yearn for revenge, and he leaps into Assault Sergeant Johnson the second he sees him. After uncovering the truth, however, the Arbiter doesn't take much convincing to help Johnson stop the Brute Chief from Tartarus, and even permanently allies himself with humanity at the end to help them stop the Covenant from reaching the Ark. The Arbiter's story is one of self-discovery and realisation. He discovers that everything he knew was a lie. The entire religion and structure of the Covenant was built off a foundation so that a small handful of people could grasp onto power, and he rejects it. He changes sides and leads the elites in a rebellion against the Covenant that will ultimately save humanity and win them the war, but we'll get to that another time. This is single-handedly the greatest part of the game, and one of the best additions in Halo history. Halo 2 is truly the Arbiter's story. While the Chief does what he does best, and is important, it's the Arbiter where the true meat of the story really is, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. We can still have that blow shit up, ask questions later missions with the Chief, as the tone remains light-hearted and exciting, but we also get the dramatic, almost Shakespearean tone of the Arbiter levels, featuring drama, betrayal and revelation. But somehow Bungie actually managed to have their cake and eat it too. Halo games have had a history of having new protagonists like the Master Chief, to varying degrees of success. Halo 2 is this done to its absolute best, with, in my opinion, the best example of multiple protagonists in a first-person shooter campaign, bar none. Call of Duty only wishes it was this good. Speaking of Call of Duty, all people often look back as that as the top dog of multiplayer gaming. Before that, Halo was king. What Halo did for console shooters controls, Halo 2 did for online matchmaking. Halo 1 did have a multiplayer mode, but I didn't speak about it in that video, mostly because I'm lazy, but also because it wasn't online and could only be played locally through split screen and a LAN connection. Look at this picture. Millennials will tell you it's peak. And low-key it kinda is. Halo 5 taking out split screen should be considered a war crime.
And I would say for any FPS going out forward, we will always have split screen in going forward.
My ass!
So Halo 2 mostly built on the framework set by Combat Evolved's multiplayer mode, including game modes like Slayer, Capture the Flag and King of the Hill from the first game, but completely revolutionizing systems around it. So let's add a little context here. It's important to remember the time Halo 2 released in. Multiplayer shooters like Quake, Call of Duty 1 and Half-Life had already released by this point, but they were all PC only. Most of multiplayer gaming people on consoles were doing at this point were all split screen or LAN parties. There were games like GoldenEye on the N64, party games like Mario Kart and Mario Party, or Halo Combat Evolved of course, all of which were designed to be played in person on the same couch. Then Halo 2 comes along, joined by Xbox's brand new Xbox Live service, allowing players to enjoy the full multiplayer experience from anywhere in the world. For the first time, we can hop online and play some Slayer, Capture the Flag, Oddball, or whatever with anyone at any time. This is where the modern console shooter formula started, and you can still see its DNA in multiplayer shooters today. If you're playing Black Ops 7, I'm so sorry. You can still see the matchmaking framework that Halo 2 popularised. I mean, Halo 2 was the first game to popularise the whole system of automating finding other players and game types. Even PC games at the time were still using a server system. We might think that making matchmaking online may have removed a bit of the social experience since you obviously weren't in person with your friends. Halo 2 also innovated the party and friend system for the first time, allowing players to easily stay in a party with friends and all enter matchmaking or even customs together, all with a brand new persistent lobbies and voice chat system. Yep, without Halo 2 there would be no funny Modern Warfare 2 lobbies. It also added an in-game ranking system, giving players something to work towards and compete with each other with. So, in case all that flew over your head, Halo 2 created the modern online matchmaking system as a whole, the party system, a ranking system, in-game voice chat and persisting lobbies. Yeah, it makes sense that Halo was the king of multiplayer shooters for a time since they basically fucking invented them. So basically, without Halo 2, we wouldn't have Black Ops 7. Fuck. Like Combat Evolved before it, Halo 2 is one of the greatest games of all time. It expanded the lore in a way that Halo 1 never could, and told one of the best stories in gaming, but it wasn't perfect. While its story was great, some of its levels were a bit rushed, with some janky AI and a legendary difficulty that can only be enjoyed by people who hate themselves. What it did do though, was create a game that wasn't just a phenomenon, but one of the biggest gaming icons of its era. It turned Halo from just being the killer app on Xbox into a pop culture legend. It pushed the Halo franchise into the next level of culture, joining franchises like Star Wars and Star Trek as a symbol of science fiction at its best, and it pushed Master Chief as an icon of gaming as a whole, something only achieved by legendary characters like Mario, Link and Kratos later on. But it's not my favourite of the original trilogy, it's this one by the way. It's clear to see why it is for so many others, because Halo 2 was more than just a game. It was a revolution. It was the start of a chain reaction that would change gaming forever. So, while Halo 2 might not have been the perfect game, it was the perfect sequel.
They let me pick. Did I ever tell you that? Choose whichever Spartan I wanted. You know me. I did my research, watched as you became the soldier we needed you to be.
Please, don't shake the light bulb.
On the blood of our fathers, on the blood of our sons, we swore to uphold the covenant, even to our dying breath.
Earth is all we have left. You trust Cortana that much?
Halo 3 was a once-in-a-lifetime game. Rarely do we ever see a game get so much hype, so much excitement, not only match, but exceed all expectations. But almost 20 years ago in 2007, Jesus Christ, Bungie did exactly that. With 2026 marking the 25th anniversary of the Halo franchise, the fan base is more divided than ever. But there's one game that unites everyone. One game that provided us with the adrenaline rush of escaping the collapsing ring at the last second. One game that acted as the epic finale of the whole trilogy. And one game that provided us with countless hours of custom games and online matchmaking. Even if it meant playing till the sun came up. Because Bungie had the impossible task of following the cultural juggernaut that was Halo 2, while also making the jump to the next generation for the very first time. But in doing so, somehow, they managed to catch lightning on a bottle yet again. Because Halo 3 is a masterpiece. So let's take things back. It's 2004 and Bungie have just released Halo 2 to mixed results. It was a cultural phenomenon, selling over 8 million copies worldwide, but they had to completely cut out the third act. The levels were tiny and far more linear than their CE counterparts, relying too much on holding out on certain points, and the prominence of the Arbiter, while awesome looking back, was extremely controversial at the time. Financially, Halo 2 was a huge success, but Bungie was left disappointed with what they'd put out. To them, they had one chance to make things bigger and better than ever before, to finally cap off this franchise, as for them, Halo 3 would be the end of the Halo franchise. For them. So they needed to send the series out with a bang, and the Xbox 360 let them do exactly that. Beyond the graphics themselves, the biggest thing that sticks out for Halo 3 is its levels. From the dense jungles of Sierra 117 to the wide open sand dunes of the Ark, to the frozen tundra of Halo, each level both figuratively and literally feels unique and allows for a genuine sense of scale. A major issue with Halo 2's level design was that it felt far too small. Well, not all of them. Too many levels had you hold out a single point or riding on a gondola for minutes on end. Combat Evolved in comparison felt much larger. Its levels were far more expansive, allowing for a genuine feeling of exploration and scale that was lost during Halo 2's tumultuous development. The power of the Xbox 360 and the relatively smoother development cycle in general allowed for Halo 3 to go back to the more expansive terrains of Combat Evolved. This really put the overall conflict on the forefront, as it finally allowed the true scale of the Human Covenant War to be shown on full display. But besides providing a more Combat Evolved-like open style to the levels, Halo 3 acted as a complete technical showcase for the Xbox 360 itself, allowing for crazy stuff like the Forward Unto Dawn coming straight down from orbit and landing above you, or gigantic dynamic enemies like the Scarabs. No longer were they a glorified scripted cutscene with only one way of approach. Now the Scarabs are fully dynamic entities that reacted to what you and what the Marines were doing, being the closest thing Halo's ever actually had to good boss fights. Yeah, since Halo 2, Halo's tried desperately hard to include boss fights in some way, shape or form. In most cases though, they're just bullet spongy and annoying like they are in Halo 2 or Infinite, or they're literally just quick time events like Halo 4.
I am the Warden Eternal. I stand in defense of Cortana.
We don't talk about that one. The Scarabs in Halo 3 are the best implementation of this, I think, since even on Legendary they are actually quite fun to fight. Besides gigantic open levels and big fuck off tanks for you to fight, most of the time in Halo 3 you'll be fighting these guys, the Covenant and the Flood. Editor's note, I completely forgot about the Sentinels, but well, let's be honest, so did you. And unlike Halo 2, there's actually something for me to say here, so let's start with the Covenant. As far as the Grunts and the Jackals go, they're pretty much unchanged. Yep, just dome the heads of the Grunts and do something to take out the Jackal shields and you're golden.
Why'd you say golden?
The Jackal snipers don't want to make you launch your controller at your siblings anymore, and now they have a glowy light on their helmets and don't one-shot you anymore. It seems like Bungie actually decided to playtest their game. The drones are pretty much the same as their Halo 2 counterparts too, meaning they're just as annoying, but still do maintain their purpose of breaking up the gameplay. Though I'd argue that another enemy does this better, and I'll speak about them in a second. The Hunters are also pretty much unchanged too, but honestly, after Bungie removed one-shotting them with a Magnum or Sniper in Halo 2, they're pretty much perfect, so I'm not bad about it. There's a bit of a theme with both this game and Halo 2 that not much of the Covenant's gameplay loop changes between games bar some tweaking, and I think that's a testament to how much Bungie got right with Combat Evolved. In the very first game, they had, in my opinion, created the perfect dynamic between the player and each enemy they encounter, requiring a mix of genuine strategy and equipment management. especially on higher difficulties. Sure, it was a bit simpler and less varied in CE, but they got the framework almost perfect on the first try. So all they needed to do was expand the enemy roster and tweak things a bit, which is where we get to Halo 3. Halo 3 has the wider roster of enemies from Halo 2, but without all of the jank and bullshit on Legendary, leading to what I consider to be the best gameplay experience in the entire franchise. To date, this is the smoothest Halo's ever felt, and it's not bloated by the odd out-of-place additions made by the later games in the franchise. And it maintains the tight, curated gameplay from CE with all the additions from Halo 2. To put it simply, Halo 3 plays like smooth, classic Halo at its absolute best. But I digress. We've still got one major element of the Covenant to speak about. The main enemy designed to be the Master Chief's equal on the field, the backbone and primary commanding force of the Covenant's ground units. The Brutes. Yep, because of story shenanigans that happened in Halo 2, the Elites are no longer the main backbone of the Covenant and are actually on the humanity's side now. The Brutes have taken their place as the main commanding force on the ground. Many fans at the time were concerned before release that having the Brutes replacing the Elites might have been a misstep, as it may change the flow of gameplay a bit too much, making it feel too different from Halos 1 and 2, something people definitely didn't want to be the finale of the trilogy. This would have especially been true if they played like the janky bullet spongy space monkeys of Halo 2, but thankfully this is not the case, and I actually think the Brutes are implemented very well. All of the key visual and gameplay elements from the Elites are still present with the Brutes in 3, like armor colour signifying rank and difficulty, energy weapons being effective against their shields, and them being vulnerable to a one-shot headshot after the shields are down. They still, though, are filled with their own unique quirks and flavour that separates them from the Elites. Like how they charge at you once you take out their shields, like how their shields don't recharge, and how their weapons and vehicles all have this scrappy, put-together biker look. The moment-to-moment gameplay is still very similar to the way the Elites played in the last 2 games, so it still has that classic Halo feel. Aside from the standard Brute variants, there are also Jetpack and Brute Chieftains. I alluded to them earlier, but Jetpack Brutes serve a fairly similar purpose to the drones. Only, well, they're much more fun to fight. They're much tankier, but are also much slower. Overall, I think they serve a similar role as the drones, but are much more fun to actually fight against. Mostly because you don't waste as much ammo missing them. Lastly, we have the Brute Chieftains, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These guys are fucking awesome. They serve as replacements for the Sword Elites, but now they have a big fuck-off hammer. In gameplay, they act fairly similar to the Sword Elites, but I don't know. Something about a big space monkey charging at me with a giant hammer puts the fear of God into my eyes in a way that the Sword Elites never did. The Covenant, though, is only one side of the Halo 3 coin. Especially in this game, we also spend lots of time fighting the Flood. This is the Flood at their absolute best, and as crazy it is to say, this is the last time they've appeared in a mainline Halo game, since all of their other appearances have been in spin-offs and remasters. So this is also them at the most advanced lore-wise too. Much like the Covenant, we still have the returning Flood forms from the previous games, like Infection forms, Carrier forms and Combat forms. All play fairly similar, but in larger numbers thanks to the 360's horsepower. For the first time since their introduction though, we have 3 brand new Flood types to fight against. Kinda. They're all actually the same Flood Pure form that has the ability to shape into 3 different variants. The Stalker form, the Tank form and the Ranged form. The Stalker form is the least interesting of the 3 as they mostly just shift into it to go from A to B. Rest in peace those with arachnophobia. The Tank form is easily the most interesting form since, well, as the name suggests, it's extremely tanky and can still annihilate you with only 1 or 2 hits. Lastly though, we've got the Ranged form and honestly, they fucking suck! They camp out a mile away from the player at whatever fucking angle they want and shoot an infinite amount with these dumb little spikes at you. And once you finally get the chance to actually shoot back, they curl up in this little fucking ball, making them practically invincible. They're the sole reason why going through Cortana and Legendary fucking blows. And of course the game likes to throw fucking hundreds of them at you. Well, despite the ranged form, the Flood in Halo 3 are still a blast to fight, as this is them at their most dynamic. In Halos 1 and 2, the Flood only ever engaged you in the same way, meaning that every Flood level kind of played the same, but the addition of the pure forms finally changed things up, as, like the Covenant levels, you now have to strategise and change your approach depending on which form of the Flood you're engaging with. So, if you've played Halo 3 before, and well, if you're this far into the video then chances are you have, you might have noticed that I've missed out on a key new addition to the game. Sure, we've spoken about the new level designs, the new enemies, but there's a third new feature to Halo 3 that I'm yet to speak about. But first, when we strip Halo's combat down to its very core features, we are left with 3 pillars: guns, grenades and melee. These are the base abilities that you have at your disposal, that everything is designed around it. Especially in the context of the early 2000s, it's a vital reason to why Halo was so revolutionary. But since Halo's inception, Bungie and later 343 tried desperately hard to add a fourth pillar. In Halo 2 it was dual wielding, which was much more first pillar adjacent. And in Halo Reach and 4 it was armor abilities. And in Halo 5 it was the Spartan abilities. All of which, well, sucked. Halo 3's attempt at this is equipment, which has some mixed results. Some equipment, like the bubble shield, became just as iconic to Halo as the assault rifle, plasma grenades, and, well, the Chief himself. But then there's things like the trip mine, which, well, it exists, I guess. I don't know, most of them are very situational, so you only end up using the same few. So, overall, equipment's a bit hit or miss. I can respect Bungie trying to add new features to Halo's gameplay loop, but I don't think Halo ever needed a fourth pillar in the first place, as, so far at least, whenever they've tried to add a fourth one, it mostly just ends up being fluff. This is probably the best attempt at it though. As much of a blast as Halo 3's gameplay is, however, it would be a bit strange if you were shooting aliens with no context. And Bungie left Halo fans drooling after Halo 2's cliffhanger. So of course, the next big reason why people flocked to this game was its... So Halo 3's story is a bit of a weird one. Like I hinted at earlier, Halo 3 is actually just the third act of Halo 2, and you can tell. Originally, Bungie weren't going to make a Halo 3 at all, but because they had to rush Halo 2 out the door, they had to completely cut the original ending. It's why, instead of a final mission with the Chief, Halo 2 ends with an abrupt cliffhanger in a cutscene. So, effectively, Halo 3 is that original ending with some busy work before that. Its story's still fantastic, and I'd say the perfect ending. Very Return of the Jedi-esque. It's just that not much really happens until the midpoint of the game, where the story really picks up. To put it simply, the first few missions is just the Chief and Arby dicking about fighting aliens in Africa, until you watch one of the best cutscenes in the entire franchise, and the story goes back to being the literal Shakespeare from Halo 2. Halo 3's story has tons of great moments that people remember and quote all the time, like when humanity and the elites reach the Ark, when Chief reunites with Cortana, when the Arbiter silences truth, when Chief and the Arbiter stand together against the Gravemind, and loads more. Honestly, Halo 3 has just as many high points as Halo 2, it's just all condensed after the halfway point. I'm not going to sit and spend 15 minutes going through Halo 3's story in intricate detail. I'm sure there are plenty of videos that go through that already, but I will go through some of the high notes, especially those that stick out to me. Essentially, what Halo 3 does best is a tying up of loose ends from the first two. While CE's story focused on introducing us to its world, Halo 2 was far more focused on telling a rich narrative within it. Halo 3 is Bungie seeing everything through and finally answering those burning questions. Obviously a very controversial aspect of Halo 2 was the inclusion of the Arbiter. While it's looked back now as a net positive, as the story of Halo 2 is only so good because of the Arbiter, many fans at the time disliked its inclusion as they wanted to spend more time shooting aliens as the Chief. If they went back to the Combat Evolved style, then they risked angering the group that loved Halo 2's new, more narratively focused direction. But if they spend too much of Halo 3 developing Chief much more as a character, then he would feel like a completely different person. Something that would feel very strange and very forced in the final entry of a trilogy. It would also go against Bungie's whole mindset of keeping the Chief as an avatar for the player. So what they did here was the best of a bad situation, I think. The Chief was back as the sole protagonist, changing the Arbiter's role to a part of the supporting cast, and as player too. This does lead to the unfortunate side effect of him feeling much more like the Chief's sidekick though. But instead of going full 343 and trying to develop Chief into a fully fleshed out character, they make his arc much more subtle. His primary focus is that of saving the galaxy of course, but he has his own personal arc throughout the game, that being his growing bond between him and his allies, particularly the Arbiter. All of this though is done primarily through body language, as, I'm gonna shock you here, Chief only says a single line to the Arbiter in Halo 3. You might not believe me, but I've checked. But most of their growing bond is shown through their actions and body language. I'll show you what I mean. In the very first cutscene, Chief wastes no time holding a gun directly to the Arbiter's head. Remember, this takes place exactly after Halo 2 left off, and the Chief spent his last few missions on his own on High Charity. He has no idea that the Arbiter, and the elites as a whole for that matter, have switched sides and are now allied with humanity. So for him, the Arbiter still shoot on sight. But by the midpoint of the game, during the previous mentioned goated scene, and where the Chief says his only line to the Arbiter, Chief stands forward. He lets his guard down, relaxed, vulnerable as he puts his gun away, and has his back exposed to the Arbiter. This clearly shows that, after fighting through each level together, the Arbiter's earned Chief's trust. It's important to consider that Halo 3 wasn't mocapped. Every character and every cutscene was moved by the dev themselves, so this had to have been done on purpose. Similar growth can be shown from the Arbiter. As I'm sure you can remember in Halo 2, Chief was the Arbiter's very own supervillain, as he blamed him for his failure in the first ring. By the time we get to the opening of Halo 3, things are still quite tense. Like the Chief though, he learns to trust and later respect the Master Chief, as they fight side by side, and stuck by Chief to see things through to the end, even after his own fight against the Prophets was over. Master Chief and Arbiter's arc is brilliant, and I think what makes it work so well is how subtle it is. I mean, the whole point of the segment was how it's unspoken, but it really lends itself into how the Chief is a vessel for the player. They don't need to have cutscenes where they do discuss their pasts and come to a mutual understanding or whatever, because, well, the Arbiter's with you the whole way. I think Bungie recognised the love that players had for their Marine buddies in the first two games, so they used that to contextualise the growing bond between RB and the Chief. You had just as much time to bond with RB as the Chief did. This also let players completely ignore it if they wanted to. A lot of people just wanted to play Halo just to run around and shoot stuff, which, you know, fair enough. Now, aside from the A-plot of one final stand against the Flood and the Covenant, which is fucking awesome by the way, I want to quickly touch on something that pretty much the entire trilogy was hinting at. So, if it wasn't hinted at enough, humans are clearly the Forerunners. I mean, they obviously aren't anymore, as the Forerunners have been retconned into being a completely different race in Halo 4, but they clearly were originally. Bungie kept throwing subtle hints at us, like how the Forerunners were completely wiped out after they had to use the rings to stop the Flood, how humanity is clearly the only race able to activate Forerunner facilities, how some secret about humanity will completely dismantle the Covenant's religion, which is why the Covenant is at war with them in the first place, how 343 Guilty Spark refers to every human he sees as a Reclaimer, the key's in the name, Reclaimer, and how Guilty Spark literally fucking says it at the end of Halo 3.
You are the child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind. You are Forerunner.
I mean, come on! I mean, how cool would it have been for the Didact to come out of his orb and reveal himself as an ancient human? But never mind, we got some generic Star Wars guy instead. Now, I couldn't make a Halo 3 video without bringing up its kick-ass multiplayer. Well, I tried, but Master Chief himself threatened he'd throw my Xbox off a cliff if I didn't, which... well, I guess that wouldn't really matter anymore. Now, you'd think that Bungie wouldn't be able to match the phenomenon that was Halo 2's multiplayer. I mean, it literally was lightning in a bottle. They had revolutionised the whole idea of what online multiplayer gaming even was. But like pretty much everything else about Halo 3, they had made it better. There were new maps, new modes, and a similar ranking system, but everything else had been improved from the ground up to emphasise one thing: community. It's something you don't really get with multiplayer shooters nowadays, but Halo 3 tailored everything in its multiplayer around fostering a dedicated, long-lasting community. It's something that people still look back on fondly today, and it's the thing that all the longest-lasting multiplayer games share. Pretty much every new system worked in tandem with each other to cultivate a thriving multiplayer community, even stuff as simple as the customization. Unlike the soulless customization of modern Halo and most shooters in general, you didn't earn cosmetics through a battle pass or spending a third of the game's entire price on a single armor set or skin. A few years ago, people would say that as an exaggeration to make a point, but we're actually at that point of the game prices now, which is fucking mental. No, in Halo 3, retail price got you the full game, cosmetics included. I know it sounds like an insane concept today, but in Halo 3, you earned cosmetics in-game through doing things like completing challenges, finishing the campaign on Legendary, ranking up, and other similar things. This meant that having a cool, unique armor set was an actual flex. All of this leading up to the biggest flex of them all, Recon armor. The most exclusive of all Halo armors, which could only be obtained by recording yourself doing something impressive enough or funny enough for Bungie to give it to you themselves. This on its own spawned its own subculture and legends around the armor and the few that had it, with plenty of fake tutorials on how to get it yourself, of course. But I've saved the best for last. As I've made pretty clear by now, Bungie had made a huge push for Halo 3 to really emphasise its sense of community, And what better ways to achieve that than to give the players the opportunity to create maps and modes themselves. This single feature not only put Halo in a league of its own, but would go on to save the franchise later on. But this is a Halo 3 video, and in its first outing, it did not disappoint. Beyond the traditional game modes and limited toolset people had with custom games in 1 and 2, people could truly make whatever they wanted. Want to treat it like Lego and just build shit on a map? Go for it. Want to do what 343 is going to beg you to do in 15 years and make your own arena maps? By all means. Want to go crazy with custom games and build parkour maps, race tracks, whatever? The game was basically begging you to do so. Forge made Halo more than just an arena shooter. It was a platform. A decade before Fortnite would do something similar, and only a year after Roblox officially released. Halo 3 is the greatest Halo of all time. While CE laid the groundwork of the series and Halo 2 told an incredible narrative, Halo 3 was the full package, without any compromises. It managed to achieve what few games ever could, and ended a trilogy in an exciting and satisfying way. It was a technical showcase for the Xbox 360, and it completely revolutionised the idea of what a multiplayer shooter could even be. But it was also the beginning of the end for Halo. While fantastic games certainly followed it, it was the last game that provided the classic, unaltered Halo gameplay loop. ODST didn't have a multiplayer mode, Reach made radical changes to the multiplayer, 4 and 5 did that and completely butchered their campaigns, and Infinite completely tarnished the last chance Halo had of ever getting back into the mainstream. Its gameplay was fun, and its campaign was decent, sure, but its multiplayer had barely enough content at launch to keep its own player base for more than a month. Its campaign was an unfinished first half that will never get a satisfying conclusion to, and its in-game store was some of the most egregious and frankly insulting prices I've ever seen. Halo Infinite failed because it wasn't like Halo 3. Not because Halo can't change, not because the game has to play and look exactly as it did in 2007, but because Halo 3 didn't compromise, because Halo 3 is a masterpiece. Thank you for watching.